Tonight, rising floodwaters in the Victoria River trigger an emergency declaration for 2 remote communities. Up to 20 cars in Alice Springs vandalised in a late-night crime spree. The unemployment rate remains steady, but job numbers take a dive. And Max Purcell out of the Australian Open after going down in a 5-set thriller to Casper Ruud. Good evening, Carl Dowling with ABC News. An emergency declaration for communities in the Victoria-Daly region who again face evacuation as floodwaters rise. Police are preparing to airlift dozens of people from the remote community of Pigeonhole who are currently stranded on higher ground, while residents in Daly River are on flood watch. But with the Howard Springs Centre for National Resilience now in the hands of Defence, safe options for evacuees are limited.
Torrential downpours unleashing chaos as rivers rise and flooding once again takes hold in the northwest.
The Minister of Police has declared an emergency situation for the communities of Pigeonhole and Dargarragu.
We could easily expect to have isolated heavier falls around or in excess of 200 millimetres.
Less than a year after major flooding forced residents from the Victoria-Daly region to evacuate, they're once again battling rising waters as the Victoria River breaks its banks.
As we speak, we're making preparations to evacuate 40 people out of the Pigeonhole community.
Another 50 people trapped in Dargarragu made a break for it this morning as the river receded slightly, self-evacuating to Kalkarinji. The community of Pigeonhole was submerged by water in a matter of hours last year, prompting swift action from police, airlifting residents to safety tonight.
The people are currently being accommodated in an evacuation centre of sorts, but it's not somewhere where you can stay for a long period of time.
With Howard Springs now in the hands of Defence, 35 of the residents will be housed in short-stay accommodation here in Darwin, a homelessness facility already under significant strain.
We have a flood warning current for the Daly River,
prompting more concerns for the community, with the river expected to exceed moderate flooding tonight.
If we have to evacuate another community, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
The Bureau says due to a combined monsoon and tropical low, a severe weather warning covers most of the NT. A number of major roads are closed and police are warning residents to be flood ready. Roxanne Fitzgerald, ABC News.
Residents of an Alice Springs apartment complex have been left in shock after waking this morning to find all of their car windows smashed. While Northern Territory Police are investigating, some of the victims say they're considering leaving town after repeated attacks. Charmaine Allison reports.
A scene of destruction.
All the cars were smashed, like not even one was left.
Residents of the Gap Road apartment complex in Alice Springs waking this morning to find every car window smashed in a senseless attack.
It was shocking to me and I was sad at the same time.
About 20 vehicles extensively damaged.
To explain the stupidity of what goes through someone's mind is something I cannot do. I've been doing this job for a long time and stupidity appears every day in everything that we do.
Residents say the complex is being regularly targeted. Many are no longer locking their cars to prevent further attacks.
It's like a nightmare for us to live in Alice Springs these days.
It's left some of the residents, including essential workers, wondering whether it's worth staying in the town.
It will be a ghost town soon. Like in no time, there'll be no people serving people here.
Northern Territory Police say they are investigating the incident and will work to bring the offenders to justice. In the meantime, impacted residents are pleading for action.
Unfortunately, that senseless, wanton damage has caused those people that live in that complex unnecessary and significant angst. I feel for them. I feel for every other victim of crime.
I am asking for the government, who's responsible for us, keeping us all safe.
A community calling for change. Charmaine Allison, ABC News, Alice Springs.
2 men arrested in relation to the death of a Sudanese teenager in Alice Springs on New Year's Day have had their charges upgraded to murder. Yoalgat Luak's body was discovered on a dirt road east of Alice Springs. Northern Territory Police charged a 22-year-old with his murder and today upgraded charges of his two alleged accomplices, aged 17 and 22, to murder. Detectives have also now obtained a video which they believe contains evidence in relation to Mr Gatluak's death. An investigation into the death in custody of a prisoner of Darwin's Holt's facility has revealed a series of medical warning signs were ignored before and during a fatal heart attack in 2022. The coronial inquest heard Mr Dowling, a 37-year-old man in custody on assault charges, went unmedicated for cardiovascular disease for months and wasn't hospitalised for a heart attack until it was too late. And a warning, this story contains an image of an Indigenous person who has died.
A quiet man with limited English, a history of cardiovascular disease and a series of prison convictions. The coroner this week examining how Mr Dowling, who died in custody of a heart attack aged just 37, was let down by the prison health system. Family of the Myali man hearing that Mr Dowling's death may have been prevented if clinical staff had responded sooner to the symptoms of a heart attack in the 24 hours before he was finally rushed to hospital. He was seen by Dr Partington, who initially determined that Mr Dowling must be suffering from a gastrointestinal and dehydration issue. His blood pressure was 80/40. Mr Dowling was then taken to the Darwin Hospital and then transferred to the Darwin Private Hospital for surgery. He had, in effect, been suffering from the effects of a heart attack for 2 days. The day before he was hospitalised, Mr Dowling's worsening condition was first noticed by another prisoner, his nephew, who then told a prison officer, who then told the on-call nurse, who then, without seeing or speaking with Mr Dowling, said his vomiting and dizziness were the side effects of new medication. The government acknowledging the lack of Aboriginal health workers within the health system with the skills to communicate medical diagnoses directly to prisoners with limited English.
Many years ago, a decade ago, we had a lot of Aboriginal health practitioners. That number unfortunately has declined over the years, but it's something we're acutely aware of as a Territory Labor government.
I know there's a lot of good work done out at the prison, but sadly in this case, Mr Dowling was let down on a number of different occasions by a number of different practitioners. Mr Dowling was one of 113 deaths in custody in Australia in 2022. Oliver Chaseling, ABC News.
Foreign Minister Penny Wong has reiterated a pathway to peace during her diplomatic tour of the Middle East. Tensions in the region remain on edge as the United States launched a fourth wave of strikes against Houthi rebel-controlled sites in Yemen. Wong walked a delicate tightrope as she met with Israeli and Palestinian officials separately.
It's a real privilege to come back here.
At Israel's official Holocaust memorial, Foreign Minister Penny Wong learns about the horrors of World War II, with an eye on the current conflict and a message for all those involved.
One of the things that is a takeout for me is the importance of us all remembering our common humanity.
Just an hour away, the top diplomat then travelled into the occupied Palestinian territories, where Palestinians claim they've been increasingly stripped of their humanity since October 7.
Yet we can see Israeli settlements.
More than 500,000 Israeli settlers live illegally in the West Bank, and violent incidents on Palestinians have surged during the war.
We're also to listen to you.
Meeting with affected communities, the Senator stressed her view that settlement building was inconsistent with a pathway to a two-state solution.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you.
A view welcomed by the Palestinian Prime Minister.
I was very encouraged to hear a very strong statement from the Minister on issues that has to do with settlements and the Australian opposition of settlement construction.
Penny Wong is the most senior Australian official to have come to Israel and the West Bank since October 7. And she's reaffirmed her support for a ceasefire in Gaza and more humanitarian assistance. But her tour in the Middle East has had one overarching theme.
I am here to add our voice, Australia's voice, to advancing the cause of peace.
Both Israeli and Palestinian officials say the Senator's visit shows solidarity with their people.
Australia is a friend of Israel's. We are also a friend of the Palestinian people.
She'll finish her regional tour in the United Arab Emirates on Thursday. Alison Horn, ABC News, Jerusalem.
There's more evidence the economy is slowing. Tens of thousands of people lost their jobs before Christmas, all were full-time roles. Outside of the pandemic, December saw the biggest losses in the jobs market in 3 decades.
This cafe is losing a much-loved employee. Jack Creed just quit so he can move back home.
Because I can't afford to live in Melbourne anymore, and so I'm moving back to Echuca.
Jack's boss is now filling the role.
A year ago we didn't get a single response for an ad. Now we've been inundated with people looking for work.
So do you feel that people are a little bit more desperate for work at the moment?
Definitely.
Around 65,000 jobs were lost before Christmas, but almost 66,000 people also stopped looking for work in December. This prevented the unemployment rate from rising from 3.9%.
Things are turning away from workers compared to a few months ago. The labour market is now decidedly less tight than it was at the start of 2023.
The figures have seen some correction after very high figures that came forward in October and November.
This is the biggest loss of jobs in a month outside COVID since the early 1990s. The stark reality is that this is part of the Reserve Bank's plan to cool down the economy, and these figures may take pressure off the central bank to keep hiking rates. Matt Johnson, who works in construction, is worried about job cuts.
If there's a massive downturn, I'll, possibly get laid off. Hopefully there's an incline in employment, but yeah, it's not looking great.
Matt's mother, who cuts his hair for free, is down 1 worker on a year ago.
We used to have another hairdresser work with us, and there's not the demand for it, so I'm just doing it myself.
Some economists are tipping the unemployment rate will rise to 4.5% by the end of the year. Amelia Terzon, ABC News.
The Workplace Relations Minister has ruled out intervening in a pay dispute between Australia's second largest port operator and the Maritime Union. Earlier, Tony Burke met with both parties and accused DP World of acting in bad faith. Stoush is leading to major delays at ports across the country.
Roger Fletcher runs a business exporting meat, wool and grains across the world. If his products get stuck at the docks, he says he'll lose customers.
If we can't deliver to our customers on time, we're completely buggered.
Roger and others have been calling on the federal government to step in and end a pay dispute between maritime workers and DP World. It's led to major disruptions at the ports with a backlog of tens of thousands of containers.
The Albanese government simply should not allow the union to keep holding the rest of Australia to ransom.
But Industrial Relations Minister Tony Burke, who met with the company today, won't intervene.
I think Australians are sick to death of having highly profitable companies say everything is the fault of them having to pay their workforce the same as their competitors.
Former competition watchdog boss Graham Samuel says companies like DP World are charging importers and exporters excessive fees to use the ports.
Charges should be the subject of a mandatory code of conduct which would be dealt with, overseen and enforced by the ACCC.
Economists worry that the prices of goods imported, like electronics and fresh produce, could also rise.
If stuff can't make it into the country but people still want to buy it, you've got the same number of buyers chasing less stuff. That's going to push the price up, and that's a problem for inflation.
Mr Fletcher fears continued delays could mean foreign countries stop buying Australian goods.
Who I'm sorry for is the trade missions that run around the world trying to get trade. Austrade, they must be tearing their hair out.
DP World says the economic impact warrants intervention, but that it will work within the Fair Work Commission process to ensure a resolution. Nassim Khadem, ABC News.
The Fair Work Commission has begun hearing a claim by the former ABC radio casual presenter Antoinette Lattouf that she was unlawfully dismissed by the broadcaster. Ms Lattouf says she was fired for posting a Human Rights Watch video about the war in Gaza on her personal Instagram. The ABC claims Ms Lattouf breached its social media policy.
Media commentator and journalist Antoinette Lattouf was hired as an ABC Radio Sydney presenter for 5 days last month. But her employment was terminated on day 3 after being accused of breaching social media policy. She's taking it to the Fair Work Commission.
The fight continues and I'm willing and prepared to fight for as long as it takes.
Ms Lattouf's claim says her manager called her on day 1 and told her Jewish lobbyists were unhappy that she was on air. She says they spoke about social media use and was told sharing content from reputable organisations was fine. Ms Lattouf then shared this Human Rights Watch video on her personal Instagram with a caption she wrote. She was fired the next day and has asked the Fair Work Commission to find she was dismissed because of her race.
It's not just about me. It's about free speech, it's about racism, and crucially it's also about a fair, independent and robust ABC.
The ABC submission is that Ms Lattouf's case is fundamentally and entirely misconceived. The broadcaster has told the Commission Ms Lattouf failed or refused to comply with directions that she not post on social media about matters of controversy. It says her race was entirely irrelevant. The ABC's claim confirms the organisation received complaints about Ms Lattouf's perceived bias on the war in Gaza. Ms Lattouf claims those letters influenced the ABC's decision to sack her. Managing Director David Anderson denies that. In a staff email, Mr Anderson said the ABC rejects any claim that it has been influenced by any external pressure, whether it be an advocacy or lobby group. Ms Lattouf is seeking compensation for damages to her reputation and for the broadcaster to pay a penalty. Isabel Rowe, ABC News, Sydney.
Coming up on 7:30 with Laura Tingle, the big supermarkets under scrutiny as prices soar.
Meat and vegetable prices going through the roof.
Basically, there are just 2 competitors and they don't have to fight very hard on price.
We've always had a budget, but now it's getting harder and harder to keep within that budget.
Also, I'll speak to the head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, Philippe Lazzarini.
The state of the Northern Territory's Freedom of Information system is in the spotlight after it took 17 months for one office to respond to requests for information from the ABC. There's now calls for more to be done to help bring accountability to the scheme nationwide. Thomas Morgan explains.
Freedom of information laws allow individuals to request information from government bodies. Under the various patchwork of federal and state laws, departments and government bodies can deny those requests on specific grounds. They can also ask for extra time to complete requests. In one instance here in the Northern Territory, an ABC journalist waited 17 months for a government office to process 4 requests. Another journalist is still fighting for a letter relating to the retirement of former Police Commissioner Jamie Chalker to be released. One transparency expert says it shows that the original design for FOI in Australia to allow Australians to access information from their own governments is being twisted towards secrecy. Meanwhile, the independent commissioner who has oversight of the NT's FOI system says extraordinary delays were very concerning.
There are always areas where there are concerns, and it's always important for government to provide a sufficient level of resourcing and also to give dealing with applications sufficient priority.
Commissioner Shoyer says 96% of freedom of information requests in the NT are completed within 90 days. But he also says he's keen to contribute to a review the government is doing into the system.
Both King Charles and the Princess of Wales will be away from public duties temporarily for health reasons. 42-year-old Catherine is still recovering from successful abdominal surgery, and next week the King will have treatment for an enlarged prostate. It will force them to delay previously planned engagements over the coming weeks.
Inside this London hospital, Princess Kate is recovering from surgery to her abdomen.
It's clearly a problem for Buckingham Palace. It's a tricky situation.
The Princess had the planned operation on Tuesday. Her office provided no further details but said her condition wasn't cancerous.
Based on her age, based on her fitness, her recovery should be straightforward.
And as long as she looks after herself and not rush back to her very, very busy schedule.
And she won't be. The Princess will be in hospital for up to 2 weeks and is unlikely to return to public engagements until after Easter.
The Princess has expressed through a spokesperson that she understands there'll be significant interest in her surgery, but her focus right now is maintaining normality for her children.
Less than 2 hours after the news of Kate, it was revealed King Charles would also be stepping back from royal duties for health reasons. In a statement, Buckingham Palace said, in common with thousands of men each year, the King has sought treatment for an enlarged prostate. His Majesty's condition is benign and he will attend hospital next week for a corrective procedure. The King hopes his treatment will encourage more men to get their prostate checked.
Well, I hope it will open those conversations that men can have with each other. And hopefully with their GP. Sometimes we hear men talk about how they find it embarrassing to talk about any prostate problems. But I think it's fantastic that, again, it opens the opportunity to really understand that prostate problems are common and they're nothing to be embarrassed about.
The King, who was last seen in public on Christmas Day, hopes to be back at work in a few weeks' time. Elias Kluwer, ABC News, London.
An explosion at a fireworks factory in central Thailand has killed about 20 people, but devastation at the scene has made the death toll uncertain. The factory in the heart of Thailand's central rice-growing region was virtually levelled flat by the blast. It's thought as many as 30 workers could have been in the building at the time of the explosion. The cause is under investigation, but authorities say it was likely ignited by construction work at the warehouse. To finance now, and the share market has dropped to its lowest level in 5 weeks. While, as we heard earlier, the job market is getting increasingly competitive. Here's David Chow.
65,000 workers were let go in December, just before Christmas. And while that's an incredibly high number, so was the 381,000 workers who were recruited last year as employers went on a hiring spree. Overall, the labour market has shrunk back to where it was in October, just as the Black Friday sales were about to heat up. Unfortunately, the job hunt will only get more difficult, especially given Australia's population grew by more than 600,000 people last year and will still rise quickly in the months ahead, while the number of positions and job ads are trending downwards. So what will this mean for interest rates? Money markets are betting rates have hit their peak and the Reserve Bank will probably stay on hold for a while. But as the year goes on, they're pricing in a 100% chance of a rate cut by September, as inflation is likely to have come down enough for interest rates to be relaxed a little. Meanwhile, it was another bad day for the share market, which has been falling for almost every day this year. The All Ords slipped by 0.6% today, driven by losses across the mining sector. The Aussie dollar also tumbled down to about 65.5 US cents, having dropped 4% since the year began. It comes after a gloomy session for most of the major overseas markets, as doubts linger on how quickly central banks in the US and Europe will cut their interest rates. And finally, it was a rough day for commodities as well, with fairly significant falls in gold, oil and iron ore prices. And that's finance.
Australian Max Purcell put on a show on day 5 of the Australian Open today, but fell agonisingly short in a 5-set thriller against world number 11 Casper Ruud. And the women's draw reigning French champion Iga Swiatek survived an almighty scare on centre court.
The heavens opened and the roofs closed early on day 5, the brief intermission giving Australian world number 45 Max Purcell a boost.
What a way to do it!
But the 25-year-old's hopes of reaching the third round of a Grand Slam for the first time were dashed by Norwegian 11th seed Casper Ruud in a gruelling 5th set tiebreak.
Look, I made a lot of errors, but I think that helped me stay free for the whole match and allowed me to, almost get across the line at the end.
Runner-up in 2022, Danielle Collins pushed the world number 1 to the brink.
Well, the Danielle Collins backhand has joined the party.
Iga Swiatek snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. At 4-1 down in the deciding set, a 5-game winning streak turning her fortunes around. Even if she wasn't sure how she pulled it off.
I don't even know. Honestly, I was on the airport already.
The outside courts were kept quiet by the rain in the afternoon. Alexander Zverev not impressed by the local wildlife taking shelter on John Cain Arena as he battled Slovakian qualifier Lucas Klein through tie breaks in the 4th and 5th sets to win through to the 3rd round. Last night, 2 more Aussies bowed out with their heads held high. Jordan Thompson nabbing the first set against last year's runner-up Stefanos Tsitsipas, but the world number 7 eventually found his rhythm and never looked back. Alexei Popyrin also put up a fight.
That's the wow moment he was looking for.
Before Novak Djokovic fired up in more ways than one to claim his 2nd round victory, taking issue with a heckling spectator.
For him, he didn't have the courage to come down.
Erin Marsico-Vetere, ABC News, Melbourne Park.
Josh Hazlewood has put Australia on the verge of victory after just 2 days of play in the first test at Adelaide Oval. Travis Head knocked a century in front of his home crowd to give Australia the lead before Hazlewood tore through the West Indies' top order late in the 3rd session.
Usman Khawaja and Cameron Green resumed play on day 2. Shamar Joseph continuing his remarkable debut as Green was sent back for just 14.
Yes, a genuine edge.
Travis Head helped settle things down, firing off 4 quick boundaries. But the morning session belonged to the visitors, with 3 wickets before lunch.
That's what they need. Big breakthrough for the West Indies.
Head moved beyond 50 after the break, finding the boundary more freely. As wickets fell around him, he stood resolute on a pitch that others found difficult.
Again, he just gets into line and guides it down to 3rd.
Joseph had his 4th when Mitchell Starc was caught at short leg, before Head had his moment, knocking his 7th Test century in front of his home crowd.
They have come in their thousands here to the Adelaide Oval and their golden boy has delivered for them.
The local boys' knock finally came to an end on 119 to a standing ovation around the Oval. Joseph's moment following soon after with the new ball.
Straight through, Shamar Joseph!
Breaking through for his 5th wicket. Australia all out with a lead of 95. The visitors were sent back in the 3rd session of play. Josh Hazlewood tearing through the top order, taking 4 wickets in his first 5 overs.
Oh, is that a nick? It is! Straight away, Josh Hazlewood on the money.
The West Indies left reeling at 6 for 73, trailing by 22 runs. Cameron Slessor, ABC News.
It's time for the weather now, and tonight's viewer pick of Lee Point has been sent in by Kev Flynn. Widespread showers and thunderstorms across central NT today, some monsoonal showers across the top end as well. It was 31 degrees in Darwin today, 32 for Dundee Beach. Looking further out, 31 today in Katherine, 33 for Nhulunbuy, and Borroloola reached 34 degrees. Alice Springs topped 37, Yulara 40 and 29 in Tennant Creek. The satellite is showing widespread clouds in the north of the country, which is associated with the monsoon and tropical low, and there are scattered thunderstorm clouds in the south of Queensland. The monsoon trough still lies across the NT, and there's still a slow-moving tropical low near Elliott, while a ridge extends over South Australia. Tomorrow in the capitals, rain and 33 in Brisbane, a sunny 28 in Sydney, 27 degrees in Canberra, showers and 21 in both Melbourne and Hobart, 29 in store for Adelaide and 28 degrees in Perth. Back in the Territory tomorrow, 35 for Alice Springs, a hot and sunny 41 for Yulara, 29 degrees and heavy rain and a possible storm for Tennant Creek. To the north, 31 degrees and heavy rain for Katherine, 32 for Bullman and 33 degrees in Maningrida. And in the west, 31 in Jabiru and showers and a top of 32 in Darwin tomorrow. A flood watch is still in place in the northwestern and parts of central NT today. The Bureau of Meteorology issued an initial minor flood warning for the Katherine River, and there's a moderate flood warning for the Daly River. The morning high tide will be just after 11 o'clock, and a marine wind warning is still active across Northern Territory coasts. The sun will rise tomorrow at 6:33 and will set at 7:20. Looking ahead for Darwin, cloudy days ahead, showers and possible thunderstorms likely continuing for the rest of the week, and a possible shower developing in Alice Springs from the weekend. They could be seeing more rain in the following days as well. Stay with us now. Laura Tingle is up next with 7:30. Good night.